We are taught that history is shaped by great minds, but that's a lie. It's mostly shaped by colossal idiots with too much power. From a king who sued the ocean to a man who accidentally killed himself trying to hug the moon, these are the 32 absolute dumbest decisions ever recorded. If you think you've made bad choices, just wait until you meet these guys. 1. We start with a man who literally died of irony. Alexander Bogdanov was a Russian revolutionary and science fiction writer who became obsessed with the idea of eternal youth. He was convinced that the secret to immortality was simply swapping blood like you swap trading cards. He actually set up an institute for this and claimed he felt younger after his first few experiments, probably due to the placebo effect. But for his 12th transfusion in 1928, he decided to swap fluids with a student who had both malaria and tuberculosis. Apparently, Bogdanov thought his superblood would filter out the deadly diseases. Spoiler alert, it did not. He died a gruesome death shortly after, proving that while you might be a visionary, pumping your veins full of malaria is a really stupid way to chase immortality. 2. Imagine being handed a blank check by a king and using it to buy a donkey. That is the legacy of Spiridon Louis. In 1896, this Greek water carrier became an instant legend by winning the first marathon of the modern Olympics. The country went absolutely feral for him. King George I was so impressed he told Spiridon to ask for literally anything he wanted. We are talking land, gold, a palace, or a high-ranking job for life. But Spiridon just wanted to make his water delivery route slightly easier. He looked the king in the eye and asked for a cart and a donkey. While you have to respect the humility, turning down generational wealth for a beast of burden has to be one of the worst financial decisions on record. 3. King Otto of Bavaria really puts the mad in monarch. Ascending the throne in the late 19th century, Otto wasn't exactly employee of the month. In fact, he spent his entire 27-year reign legally insane and locked inside a castle while a regent did all the actual work. But Otto didn't just sit around. He developed a terrifying hobby to pass the time. He would stand at his castle window with a loaded hunting rifle and take shots at unsuspecting peasants walking by. Eventually, his caretakers had to swap his live ammunition for blanks to stop the local population from dropping like flies. He was a king who thought his subjects were literal moving targets, proving that sometimes the crown rests on a head that is completely empty. 4. History is full of people seizing power, but Didius Julianus is the only guy who just pulled out his wallet and bought it. In the year 193, after the emperor was murdered, the Praetorian Guard decided to auction off the Roman Empire to the highest bidder. Didius won the auction by promising 25,000 sesterces to every soldier. He essentially bought the title of emperor like it was a used car. The problem was, you cannot buy respect. The Roman people hated him, the generals refused to listen to him, and his credit card declined pretty fast. His reign lasted a pathetic 66 days before a rival general marched on Rome and had him executed. He learned the hard way that a receipt for the throne does not come with a warranty. 5. This might be the worst real estate deal since someone traded a cow for magic beans. In 1867, Tsar Alexander II looked at Alaska and saw nothing but a useless block of ice that was too hard to defend. He was desperate to get rid of it, so he sold the entire territory to the United States for $7.2 million. That is roughly 2 cents per acre. Americans at the time laughed at the purchase, calling it a waste of money. But who is laughing now? A few decades later, gold rushes and massive oil discoveries turned that useless icebox into a trillion-dollar asset. Russia practically gave away one of the most resource-rich regions on Earth for the price of a few fancy dinner parties. 6. There is a rule in life that says you do not poke the bear, but Shah Muhammad II decided to poke the dragon, the tiger, and the nuclear bomb all at once. When Genghis Khan sent a trade caravan and diplomats to the Khwarezmian Empire to establish friendly relations, the Shah decided to arrest the caravan and execute the ambassadors. This was the 13th century equivalent of signing your own death warrant. Genghis Khan was actually trying to be peaceful, but after this insult, he went full scorched earth. He didn't just invade, He obliterated the entire empire, diverting rivers to wipe birthplaces off the map and killing millions. The Shah died on an island on the run, realizing too late that killing the Khan's messenger was the last mistake he would ever make. 7. Oliver Cromwell is the reason why the British people decided they actually preferred kings, after all. After the English Civil War, Cromwell took over as Lord Protector and decided that fun was a sin. He was the ultimate buzzkill who banned theater, sports, makeup, and yes, he literally canceled Christmas. Soldiers would roam the streets confiscating food if it looked too festive. He turned England into a miserable grey dictatorship of boredom. He was so hated that after he died and the monarchy returned, the government dug up his rotting corpse, put it on trial, and hanged it publicly. You know you were a terrible leader when people are lining up to execute you 3 years after you're already dead. 8. If you are going to flee your country in the middle of a revolution, maybe do not take the royal equivalent of a monster truck. King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette tried to escape Paris in 1791, but instead of taking 2 separate, fast, inconspicuous carriages, they crammed the whole family into a massive, custom-built luxury coach. This thing was heavy, slow, and painted to look expensive. They also decided to stop for long lunches and stretch their legs in public, treating a life-or-death escape like a family road trip. Unsurprisingly, a postmaster recognized the king's face from the money in his pocket. They were arrested miles from safety and hauled back to the guillotine. It was less of a getaway plan and more of a suicide mission with snacks. 9. Names in history are usually cool like the Great or the Conqueror, but King Ethelred got stuck with the Unready. It is actually a mistranslation of an Old English pun meaning badly advised. And wow, does the shoe fit? Ethelred faced a Viking invasion and came up with a strategy that every bullied kid knows does not work. He paid them lunch money to go away. He handed over thousands of pounds of silver, known as the Danegeld, thinking the Vikings would take the cash and retire. Spoiler alert, they did not. They realized England was essentially a giant, undefended ATM. They took the money, left for the weekend, and came back with bigger boats to ask for a raise. Ethelred bankrupted his kingdom paying for a peace that never actually arrived. 10. If there was a Hall of Fame for bad management, Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq would be the chairman of the board. Ruling Delhi in the 14th century, this guy was a fountain of terrible ideas. First, he decided to move his capital to a city 700 miles away. He forced the entire population of Delhi, men, women, children, and pets, to walk there. Thousands died, and once they arrived, he realized the new spot had no water, so he made everyone walk back. Then, to fix the economy he ruined, he introduced brass coins with the same value as silver. He forgot to put any security features on them, so every peasant in the empire started minting fake money in their kitchen. The economy collapsed overnight because the Sultan essentially legalized counterfeiting by accident. 11. Thomas Midgley Jr. is a rare breed of scientist who managed to harm the planet more than any supervillain could dream of. He is the father of 2 inventions, leaded gasoline and Freon. First, he added lead to gas to stop engine knocking, filling the atmosphere with a neurotoxin that lowered the IQ of entire generations. When people realized lead was bad, he pivoted to inventing CFCs for refrigerators, which proceeded to tear a massive hole in the ozone layer. He is basically a one-man environmental apocalypse. The universe eventually caught up with him, though. After contracting polio, he built a complex system of ropes and pulleys to help lift himself out of bed. In a final twist of irony, he got tangled in his own invention and strangled himself to death. 12. We have all heard some wild conspiracy theories, but Alfred Brisbane takes the cake, eats it, and washes it down with an ocean of lemonade. A wealthy American in the 19th century, Brisbane became the hype man for philosopher Charles Fourier. They believed in a utopian future where human society would become so perfect that the physical world would transform to match it. The headline prediction? That the chemical composition of the Earth's oceans would shift. turning all that salty water into a delicious, drinkable lemonade. Brisbane wasn't joking. He spent his life and fortune translating and promoting these writings, genuinely waiting for the day he could dip a cup into the Atlantic and get a refreshing citrus beverage. It brings a whole new meaning to the phrase, drinking the Kool-Aid. 13. Famous last words are usually poetic or profound, but General John Sedgwick chose to go out on a note of pure, unadulterated arrogance. During the American Civil War's Battle of Spotsylvania, his men were dodging Confederate bullets whizzing past them. Sedgwick, standing tall and feeling invincible, started mocking his soldiers for being scared. He looked out at the enemy lines, roughly 1,000 yards away, and shouted, "They couldn't hit an elephant at this distance." The universe heard this challenge and accepted it immediately. A split second after the word distance left his lips, a sniper bullet struck him under the left eye, ending him instantly. He was a brave general, but he failed to account for the one thing deadlier than a bullet: comedic timing. 14. In 1859, Thomas Austin committed an ecological crime simply because he was bored. A British settler living in Australia, Austin missed the thrill of hunting back home. He decided the Australian landscape was missing something cute to shoot at, so he imported 24 European rabbits and released them into the wild. He famously said, "The introduction of a few rabbits could do little harm." Narrator voice. It did a lot of harm, because rabbits do exactly one thing very well. The population exploded from 24 to over 600 million in just a few decades. They devoured crops, caused massive soil erosion, and drove native species to extinction. Austin wanted a hobby, but he ended up creating a fuzzy, gray plague that Australia is still fighting today. 15. The Vatican has seen some drama, but nothing tops the Cadaver Synod of 897. Pope Stephen VI hated his predecessor, Pope Formosus, so much that death wasn't enough to stop the feud. Stephen ordered Formosus's 9-month-old rotting corpse to be dug up, dressed in papal vestments, and propped up on a throne to stand trial. It was a courtroom nightmare. A terrified teenage deacon had to stand behind the corpse and answer questions for it, while Pope Stephen screamed accusations at a skeleton. Unsurprisingly, the corpse lost the case. Stephen had the body's 3 fingers of blessing chopped off and threw the remains into the Tiber River. It remains the single most insane legal proceeding in human history, proving that for some people, letting go is just not an option. 16. Being the Roman emperor was a dangerous job, but Pertinax seemed determined to speedrun his own assassination. He took the throne in the year of the 5 emperors after the previous guy was murdered by the Praetorian Guard. You would think this might make him cautious about upsetting the guys with the swords. Nope. Pertinax decided his first move as emperor should be to enforce strict discipline and, crucially, cut the pay of the bodyguards who held his life in their hands. He treated the deadliest soldiers in Rome like they were interns who took too long of a lunch break. The guard didn't appreciate the budget cuts. After just 87 days, they stormed the palace and killed him, proving that you really shouldn't stiff the people hired to protect you. 17. If you think your boss has bad conflict resolution skills, be thankful you did not work for Ottoman Sultan Ibrahim the Mad. This guy earned his nickname with a management style that can only be described as psychotic. One day, Ibrahim got a vague tip that one of the women in his harem had been unfaithful. He didn't know which one, and frankly, he didn't care to investigate. Instead of conducting interviews, he decided to just reboot the entire system. He ordered all 280 of his concubines to be tied into weighted sacks and thrown into the Bosphorus Strait to drown. It was a horrific act of mass murder triggered by a single paranoid thought. Ibrahim proved that absolute power combined with zero sanity is the most dangerous weapon in history. 18. Mithridates VI is the only man in history who died because he was simply too healthy. As the king of Pontus, his biggest fear was being assassinated by poison. To fix this, he spent his entire life taking tiny, non-lethal doses of arsenic and hemlock to build up an immunity. He basically turned his blood into a chemical weapon. But the irony struck when the Romans defeated him, and he decided to take his own life to avoid capture. He downed a massive dose of poison and waited for the end. But nothing happened. His plan worked too well. He was completely immune. In a final, humiliating twist, he had to ask one of his own guards to stab him with a sword because his body refused to die the easy way. 19. There are noble ways for a genius to go out, and then there is the story of Charles Valentin Alcan, a French composer and piano virtuoso who rivaled Chopin. Alcan was a musical titan, but he wasn't killed by a duel or a disease. According to the famous legend, he was killed by his own furniture. Being a devout scholar, Alcan supposedly reached for a copy of the Talmud located on the very top shelf of a massive, heavy bookcase. As he pulled the book, the entire library came crashing down, crushing him to death instantly. He spent his life mastering the delicate art of the piano, only to be taken out by basic gravity and poor shelf stability. It is a tragic reminder that sometimes knowledge really is a heavy burden. 20. Some fans buy merchandise, but Eugene Schieffelin decided to buy an ecological disaster. Eugene was a wealthy New Yorker with an obsession for Shakespeare. He decided that America needed every single bird species mentioned in the Bard's plays. In the 1890s, he released 60 European starlings into Central Park because Shakespeare mentioned them in Henry IV. It seemed like a poetic gesture, but it was actually a biological bomb. Those 60 birds multiplied into over 200 million. Today, starlings are an invasive plague that destroys crops, bullies native birds, and even crashes airplanes. Eugene wanted to honor a playwright, but he ended up unleashing a flying feathered virus that North America is still trying to clean up a century later. 21. Priorities are important, especially when you are the Roman emperor, but Honorius clearly missed that memo. In 410 AD, the unthinkable happened. The Goths sacked the city of Rome. A messenger rushed to the emperor, trembling, and shouted, "Rome has perished." Honorius looked devastated. He cried out, "But she was eating out of my hand just a moment ago." It turned out the emperor wasn't worried about the capital of the Western world. He was worried about his favorite pet chicken, which he had named Rome. When the messenger clarified that the city was burning, not the bird, Honorius breathed a massive sigh of relief. The empire was collapsing, civilization was ending, but thank goodness the poultry was safe. 22. Imagine holding a winning lottery ticket and setting it on fire because you didn't want to pay the taxi fare to claim it. That is exactly what the Ming Dynasty did in the 15th century. China possessed the treasure fleet, a navy of ships so massive they made European vessels look like bath toys. Under Admiral Zheng He, they explored Africa and dominated the Indian Ocean. They were poised to rule the globe. But then, a new faction in the government decided that exploring was too expensive and un-Confucian. They recalled the fleet, burned the ships to the waterline, and destroyed the blueprints. China closed its borders and turned inward for centuries, voluntarily throwing away their superpower status and leaving the oceans open for European colonization. 23. Algernon Sidney proves that the pen is mightier than the sword, specifically when that pen is used to sign your own death warrant. A 17th century English politician, Sidney hated the idea of absolute monarchy. He spent his free time writing a massive manuscript called Discourses Concerning Government, where he argued that kings aren't divine and people can revolt. The catch? He never published it. It was just a draft sitting in his study. But when King Charles II wanted him gone, guards raided his house, found the papers, and used them as the primary evidence of treason. Sidney was beheaded not for what he did, but for a book nobody had even read yet. He literally wrote his way to the chopping block. 24. In the history of bad vacations, the expedition of Pánfilo de Narváez takes the gold medal. A Spanish conquistador, he landed in Florida in 1528 with 400 men. His first brilliant idea was to violate the golden rule of adventuring: never split the party. He sent his ships away to find a better harbor while he marched the army through unknown, alligator-infested swamps. Surprised, the ships and the army never saw each other again. Lost, starving, and fighting constant battles with native tribes, the expedition turned into a nightmare. They ended up eating their horses and building rafts out of scrap wood to try and float to Mexico. Of the 400 men who started, only 4 survived. It was a masterclass in incompetence. 25. Ambition is a good thing, but Francisco Solano Lopez is proof that you should probably check a map before you start a war. As the dictator of Paraguay in the mid-19th century, Lopez fancied himself the Napoleon of South America. To prove his military genius, he decided to declare war on Brazil, and then Argentina, and then Uruguay. Yes, he declared war on 3 massive neighbors simultaneously. It wasn't a war, it was a national suicide pact. The War of the Triple Alliance was a meat grinder that resulted in the death of nearly 70% of Paraguay's adult male population. Lopez wanted to be remembered as a conqueror, but he ended up as the architect of the most devastating demographic collapse in modern history. 26. The Jiajing Emperor of the Ming Dynasty had one job: run China. Instead, he spent his entire reign trying to figure out how to never die. He abandoned his royal duties to focus on alchemy, demanding that his court sorcerers brew him the elixir of life. The experts came back with a potion made of red lead and arsenic, but the secret ingredient was mercury. Lots of it. The emperor spent years chugging heavy metals, convinced he was fortifying his spirit. In reality, he was systematically destroying his internal organs. He eventually died a slow, painful death caused directly by the very potions he thought would make him immortal. It is the ultimate irony. He was so afraid of death that he literally drank it from a golden cup. 27. Usually, kings are the ones who have things stolen from them, but King Farouk I of Egypt preferred to do the stealing. Known as the Thief of Cairo, this monarch was a literal kleptomaniac. He didn't steal because he needed the money. He stole for the thrill. He would pocket lighters, trinkets, and ceremonial swords from visiting dignitaries. But his masterpiece happened during a meeting with Winston Churchill. Farouk managed to swipe the British Prime Minister's prized pocket watch right out of his vest while they were sitting together. Churchill realized it was missing, and the king had to sheepishly hand it back, claiming he had found it. Imagine being a head of state and having to pat down another head of state because he swiped your Rolex. 28. There is a saying about fooling me once, but Arthur III, the Duke of Brittany, apparently never heard it. During the 100 Years' War, Arthur was a French commander with a terrible track record. He was captured by the English army, and his family had to scrape together a massive ransom to free him. A few years later, he went back to war and, surprise, got captured again. Another fortune was paid. You would think he might retire to a desk job, but no. He went back a 3rd time and was captured a 3rd time. He wasn't just a bad soldier, he was essentially a recurring revenue stream for the English military. At some point, his family probably considered just leaving him there to save money. 29. Product launches are stressful, but at least yours probably didn't end with shattered glass and a concussion. In the 1760s, an inventor named Francois Angler wanted to debut his new creation, roller skates. To make a splash, he crashed a high society masquerade ball in London, strapped on the skates, and rolled into the ballroom while playing the violin. It was a majestic entrance for exactly 5 seconds. The problem? Angler had forgotten to invent brakes. Unable to stop or steer, he careened across the floor like a runaway missile and smashed directly into a priceless, floor-to-ceiling mirror. He destroyed the mirror, his violin, and his reputation in one crash. It remains the most disastrous tech demo until the Cybertruck window broke. 30. Most leaders rely on generals or spies for intel, but the 19th century king of Cambodia preferred the Sandman method. One night, the king had a terrifying nightmare where his navy was destroyed in battle. Instead of waking up, drinking some water, and realizing it was just a dream, he treated it as a divine prophecy. The next morning, he issued a royal decree to dismantle the entire Cambodian fleet to prevent the dream from coming true. He literally scrapped his own national defense because of a bad night's sleep. It is a bold strategy to defeat your enemies by destroying your own army before they even get a chance to attack you. 31. When things go wrong, it is natural to get angry, but King Xerxes I took temper tantrums to a biblical level. During his invasion of Greece, his engineers built massive pontoon bridges across the Hellespont Strait. When a storm rolled in and destroyed them, Xerxes didn't blame the engineers or the weather. He blamed the water. He ordered his soldiers to punish the ocean. They had to whip the sea 300 times with chains and poke it with red-hot irons, all while shouting curses at the waves. Imagine being a Persian soldier standing on the beach, whipping salty water, and trying to look tough. It stands as the most ridiculous display of impotence in military history. Spoiler alert, the ocean did not learn its lesson. 32. We end with Sultan Murad IV, the ultimate hypocrite of the Ottoman Empire. Murad was a strict ruler who believed that coffee houses were dens of sedition where people plotted against him. So he banned coffee under penalty of death. He would even patrol the streets of Istanbul in disguise, decapitating anyone he caught with a cup of joe. But while he was executing people for caffeine, Murad himself was a raging alcoholic. He banned the sober, intellectual drink while chugging wine by the gallon in the palace. He eventually died of cirrhosis of the liver at age 27, proving that while coffee might make you jittery, the Sultan's hypocrisy was the only thing truly toxic. That was 32 reasons why aliens refused to talk to us. We survived these morons by pure luck. Now, be honest in the comments. Based on this list, do you think the human race is actually getting smarter, or are we slowly devolving into total idiocy? I want to see your arguments. Smash that like button if you feel superior to a king, and subscribe to keep your IQ growing.